What if I told you that Squid Game isn't just fiction? That a real-life nightmare far worse unfolded in South Korea just a few decades ago? A secret so dark that it was buried for over 25 years, until now. Imagine a world where people are stripped of their rights, forced into grueling labor, and treated as disposable, all for someone else's profit. Sounds like the plot of Squid Game, right? But what if I told you that a real-life version of this nightmare existed in South Korea for over a decade? A place where thousands of innocent people were enslaved, tortured, and even killed. This is the horrifying true story of the Brothers Welfare Center, South Korea's darkest secret. Between 1975 and 1987, in the heart of Busan, South Korea, the government operated what they called a welfare center, but in reality it was closer to a concentration camp. Under the guise of charity, thousands of people, including children, the homeless, and even working-class citizens, were rounded up and locked away. Hundreds, if not thousands, of innocent people were kidnapped, brutalized, and trapped inside a real-life concentration camp known as Brothers' Home, a place where the weak were discarded, the voiceless were silenced, and the helpless were forced to play a game of survival. And just like in Squid Game, most never made it out alive. It all started with unexplained disappearances. Children, students, the homeless, even working citizens vanished into thin air. No warnings, no explanations, just gone. Take Jung Yeonung, a 12-year-old boy who went missing in 1982. Decades later, he finally broke his silence, revealing the chilling truth on a Korean YouTube channel. I was locked up for 4 years and 8 months. He was taken off the streets by policemen, thrown into a white van, and transported to a place he had never seen before, a place from which most never returned. I had not committed a crime. Why was I given an identification number? Inside Brothers' Home, victims were stripped of their identities, forced to wear matching uniforms, and packed into filthy, overcrowded rooms. If they spoke out, they were beaten. If they cried, they were beaten harder. A police officer stopped me, searched my bag, and found half a loaf of bread. He said I stole it. I was just a kid. I confessed just so they would let me go. Instead, they burned my genitals and kept me locked up for years. Once inside, there was no escape. Inmates were subjected to brutal beatings, starvation, and relentless forced labor. And if you didn't meet the daily labor quota, you faced unspeakable punishments. The center profited by selling products made by these prisoners to foreign markets, including Europe and Japan. Over 500 people officially died, but the real number likely much, much higher. So who was behind this horrific crime? The mastermind, Park In-kun, ran this brutal operation under the so-called guidance of the South Korean government. This wasn't a rogue facility, it was sanctioned. Officials turned a blind eye. When Park was finally arrested, the mayor of Busan himself pushed for his release. And why? Because the government did not want the truth to come out. But why is this case almost never talked about? Because it exposes the dirty secret of South Korea's past. A past they hoped the world would forget. And here's where it gets even darker. The eerie similarities between Brothers' Home and Squid Game are impossible to ignore. The numbered uniforms, the forced labor, the brutal punishments, the feeling of helplessness in a world where only the strong survive. Could this be why Squid Game was rejected so many times before its release? Was there a fear of exposing these buried horrors? While the show might be fictional, for the victims of Brothers' Home, it was all too real. And the survivors? Many of them fled to Australia, unable to forgive the country that let them suffer. Even today, survivors are still fighting for justice. They're speaking out, sharing their stories, and demanding that history doesn't erase their suffering. And yet, the South Korean government has yet to fully acknowledge what happened. No true justice, no real accountability. Despite the overwhelming evidence, no one has been held accountable. The South Korean government has repeatedly blocked attempts to reinvestigate the case, leaving survivors without justice. This isn't just history, it's a warning. When governments prioritize appearances over human rights, atrocities like this happen. If we don't remember the past, we risk repeating it. If you believe the world needs to know about Brothers Home, share this video. Let their voices be heard, and next time you watch Squid Game, remember,